Alright, so, finally we come to it at last. We are going to be talking about Captain America Cold War. This is the end of the both Sentinel of Liberty and Symbol of Truth comics. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about both Captain America and Captain America Cold War Aftermath. So we're going to be talking about both. Which I feel weird as to we have a Aftermath book when really you could have just put the stuff from Aftermath in here in this book, because I just feel like this feels like an appendix. It feels like you don't need it. And the important stuff you need is kind of few and far between. So I just feel like they should have just made it like one big book, you know, like just one big beefy thing instead of why make... I don't get it. Anyway, so to catch everyone up to speed, because it has been some distance in between of talking about these comics. Basically, in the Sentinel of Liberty book, which is the main crux of this comic, written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lanning, Bucky and Cap discovered a secret conspiracy of these world-controlling people called the Outer Circle, and Bucky turned heel, turned on Steve to try to take out the Outer Circle as a new title called The Revolution. Meanwhile, over in Symbol of Truth, which was written by Tochi Onibuchi. Oh god, I butcher that name every time. I'm sorry. Sam was dealing with White Wolf, trying to take over the country, the neighboring Wakandan country of Mahanda. And I said enough about how I feel like the Wakandan, the treatment of Wakanda and Black Panther really didn't feel right. It didn't feel right that Wakanda just suddenly blamed Sam Wilson for trying to do his job, and then kicked out all of the African Americans trying to come to Wakanda to find a better life. That just felt mean-spirited on so many levels and unnecessary. Anyway, I've gone further into deep enough story about that. So what is the main... it all was culminating into this comic, Cold War, the Captain America event. So, Cold War is like I said, the end game of everything that has happened in the Captain America books. Bucky, now is the Revolution, plans to usurp the Outer Circle with the alliance of White Wolf. And they capture Ian Rogers, Steve's adopted son from Dimension Z. I really like about this comic is that it really calls back to the a lot of the Rick Remender Captain America run with like Dimension Z, the whole thing with Ian Rogers. There's a lot I really liked about this. There's a lot of things that are great, like references and callbacks to that era of Captain America. Anyway, so Steve and Sam team up to go to Alaska, where Dimension Z is being opened up, with White Wolf and Bucky as the main enemies, and Peggy and Black Widow are now on Bucky's side. Okay, first off, couple things. Why did Bucky need White Wolf? Like, the reasoning as to why he needed White Wolf on his side was very flimsy, when easily he could... It was like, oh, I needed someone to sit on the throne of Dimension Z. And I'm like, even when they try to explain why White Wolf specifically needed to be that person, didn't feel right. It didn't feel like a lot. It just feels like, oh, we needed Bucky and White Wolf to like come together and team up so the heroes have something to fight. And also, it really feels like the whole thing with Peggy turning heel too really didn't feel natural, nor did Black Widow. It just felt like she just... Like, Natasha's whole reason of joining with Bucky in this comic really just felt like she just wanted to get on Bucky's dick again. That was really it. Like, that's what it really culminated. It feels like it culminated to. We also have, like, some other stuff that just feels like, what does the point of opening Dimension Z in Alaska do with a secret organization? And also this whole, like I've said before, I'm so tired of comics trying to be like, oh, this secret organization is so secret, they've been taking over the world. We've only done that in Marvel and DC Comics 11 times a year. Each. Anyway. So yeah, I definitely really do feel like it feels kind of contrived, but I think it's a solid action story of seeing Sam and Steve teaming up. Although we do get the old villains fight for no goddamn reason other than Steve is having a PTSD moment and also trying to save his son, but I'm like, there's no way Steve... I know Dimension Z took a lot out of him. I remember those comics. But there is no goddamn way he would suddenly just go like, oh, you know, we just survived a bomb attack, but Ian needs me and I need to save Bucky. His reasoning, Steve's reasoning kind of like flip-flops back and forth between trying to save Bucky from himself and also trying to save his adopted son from Dimension Z. And I'm just kind of like, pick a lane here, Rogers. We're, like, the only one who has any sense is Sam Wilson. So, yeah. And then it just kind of ends. The comic just kind of ends after White Wolf turns into a giant wolf. That happens. And then everything meaningful with the Outer Circle ends in this book. And it also ends in a short story with taking out the other members of the Outer Circle. And then I'm thinking either A, they just ran, like, Marvel decided to cut the storyline out from under them, or they just didn't know where to go with the story afterwards. I'm inclined to believe either, because it's so easy how they take out the Outer Circle. It is so goddamn easy. Like, it was like, why didn't we do this from the get-go if that was the whole point of fighting the Outer Circle? And also, yeah, I just feel like like the Outer Circle didn't feel like much of a threat. How bitch they go out. Especially the best one is one by the name of The Power, who was the brother of the former king of Latveria, and they're like, well, what do we... And Steve and Bucky are like, well, what do we do with him? And he's like, oh, I know. They push him through a portal that ends up in Latveria, and Doctor Doom's like, oh, I've been waiting for this. It also feels like, because in this storyline, the Destroyer was killed, a friend of Steve Rogers, by Bucky's actions, and it's just like, oh, it's okay, Buck. Really? Everyone's just so quick to forgive you over killing a man who fought and bled alongside of you all? Wow. You really had to rush it really does feel like a rush to the end kind of comic. But is it bad? I know I've said a lot of shit and a lot of it feels contrived. It just kind of feels like a mad rush to the end. Because I don't know, I feel like they wanted to make this comic breathe even more with these stories. So that's at least what it feels like. Is it a bad event? I think it's got some great action, and again, it's been a long time since we've had a Captain America-centric event, and it does have some cool, like, callbacks to, like I said, the Rick Remender run and everything else, but the Outer Circle at no point ever felt like a true threat. And I do feel like that's kind of the weak point, because the Outer Circle just never felt like a credible threat, and also Bucky's whole heel turn never feels fully explored. Even in Thunderbolts I mentioned that. So, yeah. I don't know. Anyway. So, it's alright. And keep in mind, I really like this run from both Symbol and Sentinel Captain America books. I really loved both. But this just kind of feels like we were just having a scramble to the end, especially in Aftermath. So, yeah, that's just how I feel. Anyway. It's alright. I'd give it a 3 out of 5. Anyway, so you guys tell me in the comments below if you've read Captain America Cold War. Let me know in the comments below, and Chris, thank you once again for the comics. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.